Hi, I'm Carlin Borisenko. In early 2020, I was the knitting Democrat who accidentally went viral on the internet for going to a Trump rally and then left the party. I became the conservative darling, was on all the shows, traveled around the country, and then realized that conservatives were no better than Democrats. If there's one thing that I've learned, it's that both political tribes are two sides of the same coin. But it wasn't all bad. On my journey, I became obsessed with understanding the woke ideology and the culture war. I broke the story of the city of Seattle doing segregated training with its employees.
How bad has this stuff become? The city of Seattle has now put out, I'm not kidding you, this is according to Dr. Carolyn Borisenko, who's an organizational psychologist. The city of Seattle asked its white employees to voluntarily spend a day off in a training about their internalized racial superiority.
I broke the story that led to the first ever federal lawsuit against critical race theory in the schools. I broke the Coke Be Less White story, one of the biggest anti-woke stories of all time. It got over 30 million views. Coca-Cola's corporate headquarters even had to change their outgoing voicemail.
Throughout the past few days, you may have seen inaccurate reporting on the content of our recently launched diversity, equity, and inclusion training program.
I exposed the schools in Burlington, Vermont for grooming middle school children live on the internet. They called me an unwoke cult leader for that. And the Vermont Human Rights Commission slandered me publicly as being a hate channel. I even got called a hero in Breitbart for exposing that the Washington Post was writing a hit piece on Christopher Rufo. I have broken story after story after story about what's going on in the public schools, from Cambridge, Massachusetts, to autistic sex education, to the Department of Education in Michigan, literally training teachers all over the state how to groom children. I wrote a book called Actively Unwoke, the ultimate guide for fighting back against the woke insanity in your life. I host a podcast all about fighting back, and I'm downloading all of my knowledge to you on my Substack, carlin.substack.com. The world is a crazy place. We are literally surrounded by cults on all sides. On this show, we're going to do a deep dive into all aspects of the culture war, and I will show you the dark, dystopian underbellies on both sides. Here are the commitments I'll make to you. I will always tell you the truth. I will always bring you receipts. And if you stick with me, I promise you will see the world differently. Welcome to the cult. Please mount that like button for me and subscribe if you feel so inclined. Well. It's a little early, isn't it? It's a 3-stream type of Tuesday because I decided to do a special impromptu public spy stream with our dear friend, Emily. Emily Drabinski, the Marxist lesbian president of the American Library Association, although the Marxist part is actually significantly more important than the lesbian part. See, Emily thinks we care about the lesbian part. I don't care that Emily's a lesbian. I care that Emily is a Marxist. And, you know, Emily's been doing a lot of talks lately because she's on this little rebranding PR tour to try to convince everyone that Marxism isn't really all that bad. And so it makes it really convenient for us to be able to just follow her from place to place to place to place to place, just in case Emily says something that might emphasize the fact that, oh, I don't know, she doesn't think librarians should be politically neutral, which she said on last week's spy stream on Friday. Or maybe, like she said 3 weeks ago at the socialism conference, that she believes that libraries should be a site of socialist organizing. You know, Emily sometimes goes off script. We don't exactly know when it's going to happen. We don't know where it's going to happen. But if we just keep following Emily around to all the different talks she's giving on the internet, then we know it's going to happen eventually. It may not be today. It may not be tomorrow, but it will happen eventually. So the reason I'm doing the public spy stream today is that the talk that we're watching with Emily today is I'm actually not that afraid of getting caught with this one because I don't think they're really going to do anything about it. It is from the Mellon Foundation. It is called Reading Power and Freedom. It gets started at 4 p.m., so about 25 minutes from now. And it is free and open to all. So ain't no one kicking us out, Mellon Foundation. Across the country, book bans are barring access to the robust exchange of ideas in the classroom, library holdings, knowledge about our collective history, and the lessons of our complex American story. Teachers, professors, and librarians face increasing restrictions, and our society faces diminishing opportunities to be fully informed, functional, and mutually respectful. What are driving those bans? What vibrant knowledge and broader freedoms do we all stand to lose? Join Mellon Foundation President, Dr. Elizabeth Alexander, for a conversation about the power of unfettered reading and how we might mitigate the effort to undermine it throughout the United States. For this conversation, Dr. Alexander connects with our dear Marxist lesbian friend, Emily. I should really just stop calling Emily a lesbian because it really doesn't matter to me that Emily is a lesbian. Let me redo that. For this conversation, Dr. Alexander connects with the Marxist president of the American Library Association, Emily Drabinski, who is also also an associate professor at Queens College, Lisa Lucas, the senior vice president for publishing at Penguin Random House, which also, by the way, Penguin Random House was a sponsor of that librarians conference that we caught Emily speaking at last week. And Tressie McMillan Cottom, professor, UNC Chapel Hill, and columnist for the for the New York Times. Tressie was the person who interviewed Emily in the New York Times podcast that we listened to last week that was supposed to be hosted by Ezra Klein, but Ezra Klein apparently was out sick that day, and so Tressie stood in for him. So that is our panel for today, guys. We are with Elizabeth Alexander, the president of the Mellon Foundation. Dr. Alexander holds distinguished professorships at Smith, Uber Woke, Columbia, Uber Woke, Yale, Uber Woke. Emily Drabinski is an associate professor in the Queens College Graduate School of Library and Information Studies, the City University of New York. She edits Gender and Sexuality in Information Studies, a book series from Liberty Juice Press, and is contributing writer for Truth Out, where she covers the politics of libraries. Lisa Lucas is the senior vice president and publisher at Penguin Random House. I have no idea how to pronounce these, so I'm just not going to. And then we've got Tressie, and they're going to be talking about libraries and books and readings and the evil right-wing fascists that are trying to undermine the entire world. I do have the event up in a separate browser. There ain't nothing really going on right now, and I suspect there's going to be nothing until 4 p.m. I kind of wonder if this event is even live or if it's just like a pre-taped talk. I don't know the answer to that. I guess we're going to find out. But that's what we're doing today, guys, on this impromptu spy stream. Grab yourself a drink and a snack, and let me do some preliminaries before we get started. Now, as I mentioned, this is not a one stream type of day. This is a 3 stream type of day because I wasn't originally going to do this spy stream. I was looking at it last night. It was on my calendar. I was signed up for it. I was like, do I really want to watch Emily again? Really? Really? And then I was thinking about it and I was like, Carlin, don't tempt fate. Because you know what's going to happen if you don't watch this presentation is Emily's going to say something crazy and you will have wished you watched it, and you will have wished you shared it with the world, and you will have wished you recorded it. But like, if you don't watch the presentation, you can't know for sure. But you know, like, anytime you want to tempt fate, something crazy is going to happen that you were like, God damn it, why didn't I just sit my ass down for an hour and watch the presentation? So I wasn't actually originally going to do this. I was still hemming and hawing about this up until like a couple hours ago. And then I was like, ugh, fine, I'll just spy stream it. It'll be fine. But this does not negate the cult stream that I want to do later, because there is actually something I want to watch later. Now, I'm hoping that this spy stream with Emily only takes like an hour or so. I have tentatively scheduled the cult live stream to start at 5:15, but of course it's going to be like, whenever really this when this spy stream ends, basically I'm going to go right into the cult stream, because there is actually something really interesting that I want to watch today. So Chris Rufo tweeted about this yesterday. Apparently, the professors at New College hang on, I need to take a sip of coffee. One moment. No, bot, there's 3 streams today. One is tomorrow. So apparently the professors at New College in Florida are like completely revolting against New College, and they've launched this website in this initiative called Alternative New College. For those who don't know, New College is a college in Florida that has been taken over by the evil Ron DeSantis fascist lieutenant known as Christopher Rufo, and a bunch of other people on the board as well. And so they've done things like fire the woke college president. They've done things like get rid of the entire diversity and equity office. And recently they got rid of the entire gender studies program. So of course the uber socialist professors at New College are not happy about this, and they have now launched their own alternative New College, in which yesterday they released, or the other day rather, they released this lecture featuring Judith Butler. Judith Butler is one of the patron saints of queer theory. And Chris Rufo posted a clip of this presentation on Twitter yesterday, and it was basically about how they want to abolish the gender binary. Ha ha! Like we don't understand that's what they want to do. And so I saw that clip, and I sent Rufo a message. I was like, "Where's the full video?" I was like, "We have to watch the full video." And so I got the full video. I got their YouTube channel. I'm on their website, all that stuff. And so we're gonna watch the full New College socialist meltdown starting after spy stream today, because I have to see it. It's only like an hour long. I have to see it. You guys know me. I can't resist this drama going on at New College. I love it. This video, and this is again, they're going to get started around 5:15 or so whenever this spy stream is done, is called The Authoritarian Assault on Gender Studies. Ooh. So we're going to be watching that later today. Then, of course, at 9:30 tonight, we cannot let go of Nothing Remotely Controversial. Just because it's a 3-stream type of day doesn't mean, of course, Joshua is my highest priority on Tuesdays. We do this show, Nothing Remotely Controversial, where it's a lighthearted look at the news. It's where we like let down our hair, kick up our feet. Joshua is a professional psychic. I'm an amateur psychic. And we try to psychic what is going to happen. Joshua, of course, is in charge of all the psychicking. I just do amateur psychicking. And then occasionally Joshua tells me I'm right. And so we psychic what's going on in the news and all that sort of stuff. It's a really fun show. Even if you don't believe in psychics, you can come and join us. Just don't harangue us on the tarot card things. If you say anything like, don't use tarot cards, they're tools of the devil, I will block you on this channel, and I will not regret it, because I don't put up with that. Like, you're allowed to have your beliefs, I'm allowed to have my beliefs, whatever. If you don't like it, don't come. But that is Nothing Remotely Controversial on at 9:30 p.m. tonight. And then tomorrow, special announcement. Of course, we're going to do our regular 5 p.m. stream tomorrow for the cult, but we have our second clown car GOP debate. Just turned on some waiting music in the spy stream that we're watching. So tomorrow is the second GOP debate, the clown show debate. So of course I'm going to be doing a live reaction stream for that, and Joshua is going to join us. He actually asked me yesterday. He's like, "Carlin, are you going to stream the debate? Because I really want to come on and do another debate reaction stream." And I was like, "Yes, Joshua, of course I'm going to stream in the debate, and of course you can come on and join us. We would love to see it." And Joshua's going to do again astrology charts for all of the different participants in the debate to tell us who he thinks is going to win. It's going to be really fun, and we're going to be snarky about it and all that stuff. So if you're looking for a way to watch the debate, I will be streaming it tomorrow night. I think it starts at 9 o'clock, so I'll probably start the stream at 8:30 or so, and we will be doing that. It is a stream heavy week, ladies and gentlemen. But that's not even all, guys, because that's not all. On Thursday, So right now we are doing a public spy stream, which means we are going into a live woke presentation of some sort. I'm pretty sure it's live. I hope it's live and these people aren't just doing some sort of pre-taped nonsense. But like when we do spy stream, I stream a live training. I don't know what they're going to say. I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know if they're going to kick me out. I don't know if they're going to end the training. I don't know any of that. And so because of that, I've decided in the future to kind of make most spy streams to be supporter only. Last week I did my first ever supporter only spy stream, and it actually worked out really well. That was for a full day spy stream for the librarians conference, and it actually worked out really well because I didn't have to worry about basically like someone snitching on me and getting me in trouble and stuff like that. And so I actually liked that. It took a weight off my mind. It made the logistics of it much easier because I didn't have to worry about like how do I get around like snitches and stuff like that, because of course you guys know I have people on the internet who watch every single thing I do just to try to destroy it and just to try to cause problems. And so I have to like mitigate stuff when I can. So the next supporter only spy stream that we're going to do is actually going to be on Thursday of this week. So I just posted information about it on my Substack. I don't know why my throat is so crazy today. I just posted stuff about it on the Substack. Now, of course, I cannot tell you what we're spy streaming, but what I can tell you is it has nothing to do with libraries on Thursday. Today is libraries. On Thursday, it will not be anything about libraries at all. William, that's just because you don't understand it. I'm sorry. It's just because you don't understand it. If you understand it, you know it's not guessing. Anyway, on Thursday, we're going to be doing something about a trans rights thing, okay? And it's also not going to be an all-day spy stream like last Friday's was. This one, I'm going to give you a time frame. Plan to be on the spy stream round about 4:30, 5 o'clock, and then ending round about 9:30. Okay, so it's not an all day affair, and that's not the exact time of the event because I'm not going to give away any details that could be used to help other people figure out what I'm doing. But that's around about the time frame, around about 4:30, 5 o'clock, round about 9:30. That's the block, and that's all in Eastern time on Thursday. How this works is this is an exclusive for my supporters. So if you are a supporter on my primary Substack, Actively Unwoke, which is Carlyn, Karlyn, .substack.com. Let me put the little ticker in the bottom here. Or if you are a supporter in my locals, or if you're a supporter in my Patreon, or if you are a subscriber, a paid subscriber on Twitter, or if you are a channel member on YouTube, then you are going to get access to the supporter only stream. And how it works is I'm going to be posting on all those different platforms prior to the stream, probably around like Thursday afternoon, around like 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, sometime like that. I'm going to post out the links to the private stream, which will be on YouTube and on Rumble, just in case. And you're going to get access to that. And it works just like a normal stream in terms of like you're going to be able to chat in. Functionally, it's the same. However, it is only available to supporters. And I ask that people don't share it, don't share any information about it, because we want to be able to see what they're doing. When we do spy streams, guys, and I really want to make this clear, when we do spy streams, I do not disrupt their event at all. I don't ask funny questions. Okay, every once in a while I'll ask a question, but I don't ask anything funny. I don't ask any gotcha questions. I don't do anything harassing or anything like that. I want the event to go off in the way they intend it to go off, because all I want to do is listen to what they're saying. Why would people have an issue with me listening to what they're saying and telling you guys what they're saying unless they're operating in secret with secret plans that they don't want the public to know about? That just doesn't make sense to me. And so that's how that works. This is not about disrupting their event. This is about listening to them and about understanding exactly and precisely what they're doing. So if you want to support the work I'm doing and get supporter only perks like Thursday's exclusive supporter only live stream, then make sure you are a member on my Substack. And that's going to be $8 a month or $80 a year. Of course, I am completely funded by you. And so if you can support the work I'm doing, I really appreciate it. You can also become a member of my locals, of my Patreon, of a Twitter subscriber for $5 a month, or a YouTube channel subscriber. The links for all that stuff is in the description below. And if you are subscribed on any of those platforms, you will get the supporter only live stream link when it comes on Thursday. Now, I only see 2 super chats in my chat thing here, but I know, Naruto, you sent me another one before I got started. Hang on. Let me see if I can find Naruto's first super chat, because I know I saw it before I even started going live. Huh. All right. Naruto, I know you sent me another super chat, but I can't find it in the queue, so let me just get it up on another screen. Just take a second. I want to make sure I do read it. But in the meantime, I'll do the other 2 super chats. Naruto says, if it wants to display on the screen, can't wait to see Vivek mop the floor with the GOP again tomorrow. Yes, I agree with that, Naruto. Vivek is absolutely going to mop the floor with the GOP. And then Brooklyn Way says, thanks for everything you do. We appreciate you. I appreciate that. Let me see. And of course, I'm just keeping an eye on our program here. I do have the program for Spy Stream pulled up in another window. And of course, because I'm streaming, my computer is going extra slow, which is fun. I'm just trying to get into the monetization of my YouTube channel to get that super chat because I want to honor it from Naruto. Let's see. Guys, do make sure to mount that like button. We should be getting started with our spy stream. I don't know why Brooklyn Way's comment isn't coming off the stream. There it goes. Mounting the like button lets people know to come and join us in the stream. It makes YouTube more inclined to recommend the stream to others so we can have more friends come and join us to see what Emily is talking about today. Let's see. The other super chat that Naruto sent, I've got it now. What do you think Gavin Newsom? Why do you think Gavin Newsom vetoed the custody case gender affirmation bill? I think Gavin Newsom's running for president. Like, but like also, I don't know if that's the reason he vetoed it though. Like, I think Gavin Newsom is playing political games for sure, but I think it's actually way too simplistic to say that like Gavin Newsom vetoed the gender bill because he's running for president, because him vetoing the gender bill wouldn't actually be a problem within the Democratic Party. So again, like the interpretation that the only reason Gavin Newsom vetoed the gender bill in California is because he's running for president, that is a really low-level conservative interpretation of what's going on, because Gavin Newsom didn't do that he didn't need to do that to appeal to Democrats and leftists in the Democratic Party. So I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine. I think he's playing games though. I think it'll probably end up going through anyway, because can't they overrule his veto? You know, I don't know exactly how politics in California works, but it seems to me that like, well, the bill did pass. The bill did pass. That's not correct. The bill did pass. All right, guys, we're just waiting for this spy stream to get started, and I'm not going to show them anything. Oh, wait. All right, looks like the chat is up. Music right now. There we go. Now, I'm going to turn down the volume for a second. As a reminder, guys, I really try not to talk during Spy Stream because this is a live event. I don't know what's going to happen. And so it's not like I can rewind it or something like that if something crazy happens. So I try not to talk over the event. But what I do is I type comments in the chat, and then in the universe where my chat is actually working and my streaming software is actually working the way it should be, I display those comments on the screen so that you can hear you can get my comments, or I minimally do them in the chat so you can see them in the chat. But then like I put them on the screen so you can see them, so you can see what I'm thinking, but I do not talk over it. I don't think there's any reason to play bingo today. If I'm honest with you, I don't think it's going to be a good bingo day, so I didn't get it out. But like I want to be able to hear what they're saying, but please feel free to chat in. I don't know that anything full disclosure, I don't know that anything eventful is going to happen today, because this is one of those things where like Emily is outside of her socialist comfort zone. And so I think that she might be a little bit more reined in. I think that Emily is also getting a little bit tired of me releasing clips of her, because she blocked half my community on Twitter the other day. So I think Emily might be aware that we're following her around and listening to everything she's saying, okay? And so something might happen, something might not, but the reality is with this stuff that not everything we watch is crazy. There's not a banger of a moment in every single thing that we watch. This is just the way it works. Sometimes you get them, sometimes you don't. But you know that if we didn't tune into this, then Emily would say something crazy. No, of course libraries are not salvageable. No, they're not. The entire profession is corrupted. No, they're not salvageable. That doesn't mean you can't find value in your library. I think there's tremendous value in the library. But just like interacting with librarians or trusting librarians, I wouldn't trust librarians as far as you can throw them. Use them for what you can. I wouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater when it comes to the library, but don't trust them. All right. Of course, we're going to be able to get to see the chat too. Oh, Emily is live streaming this on her X account, so she's probably not going to say anything crazy. This is why I did public live stream. I knew she wasn't going to say anything crazy. Oh, well. We can still listen anyway. Hi, Emily. We see you. This is the Emily Drabinski PR campaign tour 2023. Oh yeah, Emily is live streaming this on her Twitter. Of course, she ain't showing the chat on her Twitter like we are. The whole Melon, it's not even Emily's Twitter, it's the Melon Foundation is live streaming on their Twitter. Yes, they're playing elevator music. This is not me, this is them. Yeah, it's not Emily that has it on her Twitter, said it's the Mellon Foundation. But Emily retweeted it, is what you guys are saying. Paula, you've been watching me long enough to know that the reason that Gavin Newsom gave is not the real reason, okay? Come on. I don't care what Gavin Newsom told the media, that's not the real reason.
Good afternoon. I'm Elizabeth Alexander, president of the Mellon Foundation, and it's my great pleasure to welcome you to our event, Reading, Power, and Freedom. I'd like to begin by inviting all of you to say hello in the chat, which you are already doing. The chat is rolling and scrolling, and there are people who are listening in from all over the country, from small towns, from large cities, from everything in between. So it's wonderful to have this community gathered virtually today. We want to know who you are, where you're watching from, and if you have any questions.
Just happened. Why did everything just stop?
For our speakers this afternoon. And we'd love to see lots of audience engagement in the chat throughout the program and the greater exchange and conversation that the chat supports. Today, we are convening a conversation on the rapid rise of book bans, educational censorship, and other growing restrictions on reading and learning taking place in classrooms and campuses and communities throughout the United States. Books are currently being banned at the highest rate in our country since the American Library Association first began documenting these numbers. At the same time, due to recent bills and legislative efforts, half of the states in the country currently censor the teaching of race and gender in public colleges and K-12 schools.
That's not what they censor,
any
socialist.
teaching that examines them in the context of our collective history.
Collective means
this
socialist.
criminalization of reading and learning impoverishes us all. It undermines our ability to understand and to navigate our powerfully multivocal American society. It privileges myth and stereotype over fact and shared experience. And it bars us from reading about, learning about, and seeing clearly the full arc of the beautifully complex American story and all the people in it. So joining us today for a discussion on the significance of unencumbered reading and learning are three extraordinary guest speakers: Emily Drabinski, Lisa Lucas, and Tressie McMillan Cottom. Emily, hi there, everybody. It's nice to see you.
Hi,
Emily,
so wonderful to be
Drabinski,
here.
Hi. It's wonderful. I've been looking forward to this for some time. I only wish we were together. Emily Drabinski is president of the American Library Association and an associate professor at Queens College Graduate School of Library and Information Studies. She edits the book series Gender and Sexuality in Information Studies and is also a contributing writer for the news organization Truth Out. In 2020, she was a recipient of the Career Achievement Award from the Association of College and Research Libraries, Women and Gender Studies section. Emily Drabinski. Lisa Lucas is Senior Vice President and Publisher for Pantheon and Schocken Books at Penguin Random House. She is a prior publisher of the magazine Guernica and a former Director of Education at the Tribeca Film Institute. Most recently, she was the youngest, first woman, and first person of color to serve as executive director of the National Book Foundation. Lisa Lucas. And Dr. Tressie McMillan Cottom is a columnist for the New York Times, a professor and researcher with the Center for Information Technology and Public Information, Technology, Oxford, or not, and public life at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and a 2020 MacArthur Fellow. Her most recent book, which won the Brooklyn Public Library's 2019 Literary Prize, is the truly extraordinary Thick and Other Essays. Thank you for that book. Emily, Lisa, and Tressie, we welcome you. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
So let's start by setting the scene. We're going to ask a big question first that gets to the heart of banning books, banning knowledge, banning people, and the move to restrict access to the stories and perspectives of a multivocal society. Could each of you answer? We'll start with you, Emily. Talk to us about the relationship between reading and power.
Oh my God. Socialist question.
Thanks for starting us off with the softball.
Gain as much power as possible.
And I just want to say thank you so much for the invitation to join you all today and to be speaking with these two luminaries. Is just the honor of I don't know, a career, I would say. So I'm really, really pleased to be here. And so hello to everyone who's joining us today.
Emily's looking a little
I don't
haggard.
think we can talk about reading and power without talking about libraries. So I want to start there. America's libraries are among our most used, most trusted, and best loved public services and public institutions. We serve everyone. Our collections reflect the diversity of thought and values that exist in every community. I think there's a lot of power in that, in the capacity of libraries to connect people to worlds beyond their own experience, as well as to their own, which they may not yet have a way of describing to themselves. I think that piece is so crucial, and why we've seen a lot of these book ban attempts aimed at children and young adults. Reading is a way of becoming legible to both ourselves and to each other. But it's not just about the relationship between the reader and the book. Reading is also a social act. It's one of the ways we see ourselves in the world and imagine ourselves as a part of various communities. Reading has the power to constitute community, and I think that's really important. The act of censorship acknowledges this power. Who gets to read what is ultimately a question about who is allowed to see themselves as belonging to which kinds of communities. And by exercising the power to ban certain kinds of books, people and institutions declare that certain kinds of readers are not welcome in that community. Libraries democratize access to knowledge, and I think, and when I think of my own relationship to fiction, the extent to which I can imagine a different world is linked to the extent that I have access to imagination, my imagination, the imagination of others. So I'll close by talking about a book that I talked about on a podcast with Tressie West a couple of weeks ago, and Bolo Mbue's wonderful novel, How Beautiful We Were, which sticks with me. And I'm so pleased to have so many members of my family reading it after they heard me on your podcast, Tressie, so thank you for that. And in that book, she writes about an all too real fictional community where the land has been leased to an oil company by a government that has made that deal with the corporation. The attendant pollution causes death and disability on a broad scale. But what can anyone do about it? And to me, I wake up every morning, I'm like, what are we gonna do about it? Like, we look at the world, what are we gonna do about it? And in a masterful first chapter, Mbue gives us a way of imagining a way out. A man swallows a key, nobody can leave. Change can happen, and sometimes it requires madness, belief, and hope. That for me is the power of reading. It gives us an opportunity to imagine both why and how the world could be otherwise.
Thank you. And let me follow up on something. What do you mean when you say reading can constitute community?
When I read and you read the same book, right? And I see, Tressie, you've read this book, right? You and I have read this book. We can talk about this book. I am guessing we could talk about this book for hours. And by having that kind of reading that we can do in community with one another, both of us are in a world together, a world that we can change. And I think that's essential. All of us have to believe that things can be different.
And can I say about Emily, who I just love to hear her talk about books, which is why I had her on the podcast. I just really wanted us to talk about books.
It wasn't your podcast.
I also think about the community it builds across time.
It wasn't even her podcast. It was Ezra Klein's podcast.
You can pick up a book today, and books don't expire. Whenever people, sometimes they'll come to me and be like, oh, I'm sorry, I know I'm reading your book late. I'm like, books don't expire, right? Like the reading material doesn't expire. You can pick it up, and you're also in conversation with people who read it 20 years ago, 50 years ago, 100 years ago. And so it's also building community that I think is resistant to the clock. And what do we have anymore that is resistant to the clock, that all consuming tick tock? So you can also build community like outside of time and space. It is
Time is
quite
white
literally
supremacy to
magical. I
these
know I
people,
get real
remember?
romantic about it, but I was just thinking that.
Well, thank you. And I love that because I think that there is timelessness and across time, as you say. And also, we might put a pin in the idea of being in community in spaces together,
That's
in
socialist
classrooms,
talk. I hope
in
people know that.
libraries as
In
community
community together,
spaces, and in other kinds
collective
of
spaces.
community spaces that that we might name. And so, Tressie, how would you answer the question? What is the relationship of reading to
The top
power
two
or
absolutely are. The bottom two,
empowerment?
useful idiots, probably.
Gosh, it's going to be really hard to answer it better than I think Emily did. And I also want to thank you so much for giving me a chance to talk to two people who I just so respect, admire, and enjoy, and the chance to be here with you. So thank you so much. And to everyone joining us for what I think is just really an important conversation. And a conversation, by the way, I wish we didn't have to have. So let's just say that. And I want to thank you for doing something that I think is important, which is expanding this conversation to include not just book bans, but the many bills marching across this country that is also restricting, like you said, curriculum broadly defined within classrooms,
It's
across the
not broadly
classroom,
defined.
K
They're
through
actually very
16.
specific.
So, it's when I think about reading and power, the very first thing that just sort of happens to me emotionally is I think about, enslaved people, and I think about the one of the first acts of agency so many enslaved people took was learning how to read. And I think it speaks to, and not just enslaved people here in the United States of America, but you see this with oppressed and enslaved people anywhere in the world, right? If you think of enslavement, yes, it's an act of possession and dispossession, but it is also fundamentally an act of control, trying to control the body by trying, and through control of the body, trying to control the creative energy and spirit and potential of a human being. And so when people want to try to own themselves and reassert their agency, one of the ways they do that is by trying to claim the right and freedom to read. And you see that over and over and over again. And I think it speaks to how fundamental human beings think the act of reading is to the expression of human agency, which is why it's so fundamental to how societies organize themselves. And so when I think about how important reading is to the relationship of power, we need only look at how much people are willing to fight over it to understand its power. I don't think you have to value reading yourself, right? I can get personally romantic about reading, but I fully understand that not everyone enjoys reading or can have different, maybe contentious relationships with reading. But I say to people, you don't have to enjoy it to understand socially, politically, and culturally that a lot of people are willing to invest a lot of energy and resources into turning reading or access into reading, the spaces where we read, who is allowed to read, what will constitute effective, accessible, affordable reading, that people are willing to invest a lot in controlling access to that, to understand that there is something at stake there for you individually and collectively, whether you enjoy reading or not. The fact that a governor is willing to invest political capital in making that a political football says that you need to have an opinion on whether or not you believe reading is a fundamental right or not. Right. And so the relationship to me is one that is,
Conservatives
yes,
never should have
individual,
started
but
down
I
this
think we need to be
road.
making the case
Big
more
fucking
strongly
mistake.
that you need to have a
Big
perspective on this,
mistake.
whether you enjoy reading or not. This is, to me, definitionally a social problem. One where if you're going to consider yourself an informed citizen, if you're going to consider yourself a member of a family, a responsible parent, a responsible member of a community, if you are responsible for anyone, and you consider yourself a member of a bowling league, a member of a church, you right now need to have a perspective on whether or not reading is something that you value. If not for yourself, then for others, because someone somewhere values it enough to fight for it. And so I think the relationship is individual, is social, it is political in both the small sense and in the capital P sense, political. And it's cyclical. We find ourselves in these positions, and we're at the top high point of that cycle right now.
Thank you. And I want to come back to the now part of it. But first, I'd like to hear from Lisa how you would answer this question, the relationship between reading and power.
Sure. I mean, to that idea of the sort of personal politics and the larger politics that Tressie was talking about. And also, hi, I'm so happy to be here with all of you all, and so happy to be with you, Elizabeth, and everyone watching. It's so important. It really is so important to talk about this right now. But the idea of sort of personal power, political or personal politics, and sort of larger collective politics, right? Of course, we know when we are denied access to being able to understand the information that's in front of us, or being able to decode the news, or being media literate, or being able to sort of unpack our lives in context of history, right? That is power. Knowing knowledge is power, you know, not to be corny about it, but these things are true. But on the larger sense, I think that there's a real sense over the years from an America that's not interested in a multivocal America, that's been able to create this sort of false sense of non-diversity for many, many years.
That argument ain't gonna fly here, conservatives. Do not defend your book banning bullshit to me. You have
on our art,
so much stuff
and
up with
who's
the
making
book
the
banning
books,
bullshit.
who's writing the books, who's getting their books promoted. Access to that information, marketing the books, and I'm talking from a publisher standpoint, of course, because that's
conservatives
where I live.
Handed these people the biggest gift they could ever hand them with the book banning
we were able
bullshit.
to reduce the impact of other voices for so very long. Of course, there were touchstone books in the 50s and the 60s and before that, but really the volume was quite low in comparison to the enormous amount of books that were published into the quote unquote mainstream. And once that power starts to change, just like when hip hop starts to become beloved by, you know, young, white, middle American kids, you start seeing the bans. These lyrics are terrible. We shouldn't be talking about this. And you see that from all different types of community, but it started to spread. And what we have now is an environment where these ideas have started to spread so much and so fast. Social media is making books nuclear. We are all hearing about this award or this podcast, and we're running to buy that book, and we're seeing volume around anti-racism. We're seeing volume around, you know, trans rights issues. We're seeing volume around stuff that you could really only consider niche and marginal in the mainstream book constellation 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And so it's changed so much. And I think that you see the power of actually having primacy inside of books, inside of literature, inside of who tells stories, inside of who is the expert. And now you see a real closing down of ranks. You know, everyone knows that minority majority is coming, quote unquote, such a terrible expression. But the dynamics and the demographics of this nation are changing so quickly that what you're seeing is a scramble to maintain power as a diminishing demographic. Right? How do we take what we decided was mainstream and what we decided was going to be the way that this country was perceived, and how we are going to train our young people to perceive of themselves as Americans, whoever they are. And that degrades, right? When you have a tipping point in the population. And so I think that you see, just like when you have slavery and you're taking away the ability to read, just like in Russia, Masha Gessen wrote this incredible book called The Future is History, which is talking about totalitarianism in Russia and how the first thing you lose are the books and the access to interiority, the access to sort of thinking about ourself and our place in the world and our personal power and the import of our lives and being able to access other nations, other places, other communities, other religions. And so this is a time-tested power move. Not just when people were being enslaved, not just in Russia when the ranks are closing down, but anytime you want to keep anyone down or you want to maintain disproportionate power that you really don't deserve and you really can't hold on to through any other traditional means, you have to really look at the fact that knowledge is power, and you have to keep everybody ignorant, and you have to keep everyone dumb, and you have to make sure that everybody's on the same thing, because the power of an educated community and people who are able to sort
Who's
of be
really keeping
legible
people dumb?
to each other, people that are able to sort of imagine more or elsewhere or the connections between us are dangerous. And I think that just the volume of the lashback against just having an equitable literary landscape
Equity is socialism.
goes to show you just how much. But I do think also power is in numbers. And a lot of these books that we're seeing banned and a lot of these ideas that we're seeing come through, which is why I think they're moving to ideas and curricular topics rather than a particular title, is because we are not a nation of readers, actually. We are unfortunately not a robust nation of readers. We can sell a book and we're really excited if it sells 50,000 copies to 325 million Americans. If it sells 100,000, that's terrific. If it sells 1 million copies to 1/325th of the American populace, you have one of the best books year over year for 10 years, right? Very few books achieve this in 1 year's time. And so they're looking for heat, right? The books that are really capturing the imagination, which is an opportunity, right? Because we have the power to actually read all the other books that nobody has looked at and to elevate just the practice of reading. And I think that there's nothing but power inside those pages. Nothing. Everything about my life has been empowered by books. You know, every relationship I have has been empowered by books. My politics, my faith, you know,
oh yeah,
the
I
things
bet
I
your
believe
politics
in, that's
have
all
been
from
empowered by
books.
books because you're a socialist.
And so, you know, it's hugely powerful and it's the obvious, but I do think it bears reminding because we forget, we take it for granted. The book is always there, but the book is not mighty without a reader. And we're in a place where I think we have to talk about who's policing the books, but we also have to talk about who's reading them in the first place.
Thank you. Thank you. And so I think what I'm hearing many things in there, but I think what you're lifting up is that the books and the book banning, that's a proxy for other things. You know, the books are a proxy for
if only
changing
conservatives thought
demographic
that far ahead. They sadly do not.
An empowered demographic, right?
Absolutely. You know, I think seeing us become empowered means let's strip the tool with which you build the power away as soon as possible, and any allies you might develop along the way.
Think about it as sort of,
please.
Sorry, just as like a queer person growing up in this country and growing up in Boise, Idaho, where I think I knew 2 lesbians who happened to have an antique store in my mom's. Anyway, it's like very few representations or and not even like film or media representations, but people in real life who had an open queer identity, and how different that is today. I have a 15-year-old who has out trans kids in his class, and it's the thing that's not even imaginable to me as somebody just a couple, you know, just like not that much older than him. And so the profusion of ways of being in the world and occupying yourself and your gender and your sexuality, it's so beautiful and wonderful and inspiring this kind of intense political crackdown on those ways of being. So it's like it's a proxy for something, right? Because we know it can't be about the book. Anybody who has a kid knows that the book is not their sole interaction with the outside world. That's not their primary mode of exploring who they are, right? So it's like the book is a thing that you could potentially control. You imagine that this is an object we could remove from circulation, and maybe it would remove this problem of so many ways of being. And that's the part that I really get stuck on. Like I like difference. I enjoy being around it, and it doesn't scare me. But I think there are more openings, right? Because exactly what you were saying, Lisa. It's not as if book bans are new today. We've got hundreds of years of like really solid book bans on any book that didn't, right? It's like the book. There are many ways to ban a book. And that legacy
it's always been down, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
But I also think that there's, you know, books are unique in the landscape, right? If you are a dance maker, right? You're a dancer. Every school, everywhere, every age group doesn't have dance. Not everyone. Many people do, but not everyone. You make theater, you're a theater maker. Everyone doesn't have a black box theater in their school. Everybody doesn't have a theater class. If you play lacrosse, every school doesn't have a team, right? One of the only ways you can reach every child in America, is through a book. And it's such an interesting sort of starting place, right? Because almost if any business that could give any American kid from the day they were 2 years old a thing, so that they could hope that they would buy that thing, They would be so excited. That's the opportunity of a lifetime. That's market share right there immediately, day one, with all the opportunities to grow them forever. And books have that. And so it is really one of the most powerful places to start, because you're feeding into every child that is inside of a school. And it's the only way to get to everybody. How else can you reach everyone? Not everybody has a TV. Not everybody has a phone. Everybody has broadband. Not everybody has anything, but everybody's in school. Most people are in school.
But there's also this attack on public schools that, all of it is tied together.
But it's, but it's very much like it's the place of all access. And libraries, right? You also have something that's free to everyone. So the spread is bananas.
Let's talk about the spaces in which each of you works. Lisa, in now commercial publishing, though you know about all of the different ways that books are made. Tressie, university, and also in the public square of mass media. And Emily, in the classroom as well, and also in libraries themselves. And also, I would say, within the larger space of libraries and librarians, right? So that larger identity.
I really hope conservatives understand that these people love your book banning
where
stuff.
You are and how these
they're using the book
banning
stuff against
that
you
we're
every
discussing
single
of
day.
book banning and also the banning
and you're more
of,
interested in arguing the vocabulary
but certain
than you are in
and fields of
understanding
study
that they love that you're doing
is affecting the
they
place where you work.
This. They're eating this for
Why
dinner.
don't we start with Tressie?
Yeah, I just keep thinking about. I was just listening to Lisa and Emily, and I was thinking about there is something, today's book bans and information censorship, I would say more broadly, curriculum censorship and the attempt to control the flows of information are both historically, part of a historical trajectory. And as things do, when they are, have a specific character to this moment. And the thing about this moment that is specific, one, I think this is maybe the first time that the appeal to censorship, those trying to censor are not saying that they are more expert.
How about
than
not
those
being
who
reactionary
are
for once in your
the
lives?
Books and sending out information. Previous book ban eras, it was a cleric who said, "We know better because we are closer to God or to the seat of religion." Or you have, in the 1960s, "We know better because we went to more elite schools," or "We have the more liberal arts, the greater liberal arts tradition," right? What we have now is not an appeal to liberalism, but an appeal to illiberalism. There's nobody saying that we've read these books more
conservative argument
than
against
those
them
who recommend them and those who are putting them into schools. And in fact, there's a great pride in saying, "No, I haven't read them at all," or "I don't need to read them," right?
She's
it is
right.
An appeal to sort of a popular ignorance. And that does feel distinct and new about this moment. And I mentioned that for a reason. I'm gonna stick a pin in for a second and tell you I mentioned that for a reason, because I think that is part of the way this broader based attack on my workplace and the places where I work.
Oh, so you make the problem worse.
How we do knowledge
congratulations, because
production,
you're allowing
and
them
why it
to
feels so
win.
particularly chilling. And then the second thing that feels distinct about this moment is that this sort of like information censorship is sort of stemming not from a scarcity of information. So previous eras, it was that, it was hard to get your hands on a book.
Their terminology is correct.
Right? I mean, books came
the
to
terminology
schools
is correct.
Through libraries
That's
and from
why
a traveling salesperson.
Because they're right.
Right? Somebody came around selling encyclopedias. My mom bought me some. It was a really big investment to have a set of encyclopedias. That and the anthology of Negro literature, which my mom also had, and we were very proud of. Right? Yeah. But it was very hard to have sort of like a survey, a census of information at your fingertips. The information deluge that the internet has brought us has actually changed our relationship. So we have both this pride and sort of ignorance,
you
and
are
that being the appeal
because
to
you are
the way
wrong.
the appeal to censorship, and there is just so much of it. And so the book is actually competing in this weird way with information overload. And what that means for where I work and the ways that I work is that the attacks on us are that we can be displaced by these other modes of knowledge production. So the censorship is saying not that there are greater experts than university professors or knowledge producers at like the New York Times or whatever, or public intellectuals. It is an appeal to sort of a delegitimization of expertise altogether. They don't want to put in other experts. They're saying it is an attack on the idea of expertise altogether, right? And part of the way they are making that claim is by saying you don't need expertise because there's now so much information, right? You can ban the books because you've got the internet and you don't need to worry about it. And I think that is has a certain type of palliative effect on the general public who maybe isn't paying a ton of attention, and it's easier to sell them on the bans and the pernicious effect of information censorship and banning curriculum at colleges and universities, because it's so easy to sneak in a censorship ban by saying, well, yeah, we'll get rid of the African American Studies department, but don't worry because your kid can still Google all of it, right? And don't worry about the fact that your kid won't be able to find any books in their school library with characters that look like them. Because, hey, you know, the internet is, social media is full of pictures of people who look like them, right? There are memes of queer people all over the place. So what's the big deal, right? When instead getting rid of the entire idea of putting information in context, of the importance of understanding
banning books is anti-intellectualism. It is illiberalism. They're correct. They are using every single argument the right has made for years against them, and they're using it correctly against the right. And crying and saying they're wrong isn't actually going to make it true. They're correct.
Numbers and a series of information into your pre-existing schema, and then being able to act on it. And one of the things that we are seeing in the classroom that is terrifying to many of us is that young people, even some of our own colleagues, are not clear on the difference between information and data and learning. And if we aren't clear on the difference, I'm not sure that we are prepared to be advocates in this really complex debate in the
They're
public.
so much better than this
really
than the right is.
strong
It's not
advocates
even funny.
explaining to people that
That's
no,
what I'm
you
learning
do
today.
not want to let
How
loose
much
your
better
children
these
on
people
Google.
are than the right.
That no, history is not just a series of facts. That no, you do not want your children trying to make ethical considerations about what their identity means, about what their values are, from a series of decontextualized, uncategorized series of data points that have not been given any schema of meaning or classification through trusted institutions and people like librarians and editors who have vetted it for much less line editing, but clarity and sense making, right? That communities of people who care about the veracity of information have come to a census about this is what
All right.
value.
The ship posting in the chat is going to stop now.
And worth knowing. And if we aren't prepared to make that case, that I think we are worried that we are in trouble. And to be fair, we're tired. We're tired, and we've been through a lot. And there's a reason why we perhaps aren't prepared for the conversation. But I think that we are afraid. We are under-resourced, overwhelmed by the really rapid onslaught of bills, the turning of public sentiment. It is a terrifying thing to be thought of as the enemy of your elected officials, to be a public enemy, for people to turn against you when you have considered yourself a public servant. It's scary and alienating. I think a lot of us also feel that way.
Yeah, thank you. Emily, front lines of libraries.
I mean, it's just what people are facing on the ground in American libraries right now. It just makes my hair curl sometimes. And, it doesn't start with just the book banning thing, right? Like we've been talking a lot about kids in schools, right? Like the argument that when a child is in school, they can gain access to all this information. But in many parts of the country, having a school librarian, a certified school librarian, and a well-resourced school library inside of your building is an extraordinary luxury afforded only a very, very small number of people. I was in Chicago visiting friends a couple of weeks ago and learned that they've got 500 public schools in that system and about 90 librarians. And so you're doing a lot with very little, and people are doing that every day in contexts that just, it's not fair, right? You look at public libraries where not only am I trying to help people find the book that they want to, keep them reading, which is a great service, but also we're the only public institution where people can sit down, get a drink of water, use the bathroom, plug in a laptop, use broadband internet. The library becomes the emergency management system for everybody, right? Like it is the site of so much. And also in Chicago, just recently, there's been a rash of violent threats, bomb threats called into libraries across that metropolitan region. And you're just trying to do the good work of making public resources available to the public. That's your job. Who could be against it? I hear so many beautiful, amazing, wonderful library stories every day. I'll tell you just one. I was in a library in West Warwick, Rhode Island. When you walk into the library, you open the door, and standing right there is a shelf covered with those little 4-inch plants, like succulents and cacti, and then painted on it in this little kid writing, take a plant, leaf a plant, right? It's beautiful and heartbreaking, and you love it, and there's no way to not be for it. You want more of it. It's a community collaboration with the Girl Scout troop, bringing kids into the library and bringing climate change, and I think it's part of their climate badge program, right? It's just a wonderful, beautiful moment, and there are 800 of those in the West Warwick, Rhode Island Public Library, and in every library around the country. And so the organized censorship attempts that we're seeing get in the way of that. Lisa Varga, who is the head of the executive director of the Virginia Library Association, has a great, she has a big check that she holds up at legislative sessions saying, this is what it's costing in our very limited resources, right? Or consistently under-resourced public institutions. This is what it is costing us to process the attempts to ban books, which means the attempts to ban the experiences of people in our communities at the library. And for me, it's just a sad and sort of tragic waste. And people are tired. They're very tired. I can feel you on that, Tressie. People are exhausted. And they're exhausted from decades of trying to work in underfunded institutions. I've never been in a library without a bucket under a leak, right? And just we're already dealing with a small number of resources to keep these institutions going. And I think fatigue and fear are two of the biggest things that we're having to fight right now.
The United States will become a Marxist state because the conservative right is
Lisa,
doing absolutely nothing productive to stop it. That's what will happen.
It's a very complex
There
and
is
interesting
nothing
time
that the right
in
is doing that's
because
going
I think
to
you're
defeat
dealing with
nothing,
the quiet
not a damn
ban
thing.
that was going on for decades that's been undone, right? Kind of by the general public, by some of the nonprofit institutions, libraries in the country that have been celebrating and promoting color, queer voices, things we haven't seen before for many years. The last 20 years have been just the kind of changes that have taken place. 10 years really have been extraordinary. The opportunities are endless, but it's made publishing quake, right? It's a rebalancing that has only begun. It is nowhere near mature. I wouldn't say industry-wide, when you look at the critical apparatus, when you look at, all of the different publishing houses, you look at the editorial, sort of workforce, when you look at, the leadership, the leadership demographics, it's not much has really actually changed in publishing, but the veneer has. There have been some strides, but when you look at how big the system is, how many people are employed by it, and how many books we're publishing on any given moment, I think you see a real difference between children's publishing and adult trade publishing, which are in two very siloed, very different areas. And so I can speak from the adult trade publishing side, and I know that a lot of the bans are happening with young people, but that has touched my life as well. So you've got that one thing going on where you're having kind of a real culture war inside of the houses.
The next
right?
guard is already raised.
An aging, and really talented workforce, right? That's been around for a long time and has really overseen this kind of inequitable publishing for a long time. Not everyone, some folks. And then you have, sort of a new generation that's really divided, right? Where you have a lot of people who are like, I want to see myself in a book. I want to make this kind of book possible. I'm a new, energetic. I care about reading as a political action, not just as some sort of elite, rigorous activity that makes me feel fancy and good. But then you also have young Americans who just want jobs and like to read, and they grew up reading, Colleen Hoover, in college or whatever they were reading, who really don't want to feel bad. They don't want to feel any worse than those books made them feel, which is the whole point of them. They don't make you feel bad. And so you have, even within the younger generations, which I think people are.
Why wouldn't these people milk the book banning? The book banning that conservatives are doing is the greatest gift that they have ever given to the left. It's not even funny. The book banning means that the conservatives lose absolutely every single disaffected lefty that they hadn't already lost from the abortion bullshit, but they're losing all of them now. This is a talking point that's going to raise them millions of dollars. They're not even afraid of the book banning anyway, because they're printing new books all the time that will replace the books that you banned, so you didn't even accomplish anything anyway. This is the greatest gift that the conservative right has ever handed the left since abortion. It was always the stupidest idea that conservatives have ever had, to try to ban goddamn books. And they're going to use it for everything it's worth. And they're going to win with it, guys. They're going to win because conservatives are obsessed with book banning.
Which is,
I hope you enjoy socialism.
And it's been banned on and off by 1,000 different people, over the years, and all of them have been very soft.
It is a categorically
sort of censorship in the sense that somebody just wanted to make a point, and it didn't really go very far, and it didn't have a lot of virality.
Anything having to deal with banning books, anything, I don't care if it's top down or bottom up, is an extraordinarily bad strategy. It was always a bad strategy. It was always a bad idea. Moms for Liberty has done more damage to the anti-woke movement than any organization in the country by far. It is a categorically bad strategy. Categorically bad. I wrote a whole book about this, Alexa. It's called Actively Unwoke, the ultimate guide for fighting back against the woke insanity in your life. You can refer to that.
I just was like, oh, I think something's going on with Mouse. Should we talk about this? And again, I'm like a baby little publisher. I'm brand new at this time. And, they're like, oh, it happens all the time. And it just got louder and louder. And because it's a new world that we're living in. And I mean, we ended up selling more copies than we could count of Mouse that year. So it's having the Dr. Seuss, when the Seuss estate decided to cancel a few of their own books, right? To say, we don't actually need this to be part of our legacy. Let's just do this. Nobody told them to do it. It was no drama. It was just a sort of considered decision to kind of just like, let's get this done. And the more conservative contingent of the nation got really upset and thought that Dr. Seuss had been canceled and bought all the Dr. Seuss. So it's happening on both sides. You restrict a book because it seems canceled and everybody wants to buy it and it goes on the bestseller list. You ban a book and then the other side buys hundreds of thousands of copies and it goes on the bestseller list. And it's confusing to sort of really think about, it doesn't end up impacting us a ton in terms of what we were thinking curatorially or editorially, because there's not really a downside to the banned books in the same way that there are to the canceled books, right? So you have the whole Jan Wenner thing that happens last week, which is like, that's a kind of thing that would be a big nightmare, right? Where he cell phones in the New York Times and women, 50% of the population are horrified, and
it is not just sex.
And it's tough,
one of the very first books that conservatives tried to ban, it was a Moms for Liberty group in Tennessee. They tried to ban Ruby Bridges. It's not just sex books. It's not just sex books by a long shot. I got into an argument with a conservative librarian actually just last week who wanted to ban And Tango Makes Three. And Tango Makes Three is a book about penguins. There's no sex in it. It's a book about gay penguins. That's it. And she said, oh, it's subtle indoctrination because the penguins are gay. And I said, really? Really? We're back to the gay-hating bullshit, conservatives? Really?
Work process and flow. But I think the larger issue is about what would happen if we were publishing more of these books to scale because our workforce had changed. And I think that that's the interesting what if, so much as like what's happening in publishing is like nobody's saying don't buy this book, it'll be banned. I don't know what's happening in children and publishing in the same way, but I published several books. The Diary of Anne Frank, illustrated, is banned right now. I mean, it got a ban 2 days ago, and it's like sold like 5,000 copies like last night because it was on the news somewhere. It's insane. It's really, really, really. It's distracting. Emily made the point of like this is distracting from the real work. I don't want to be making sure that there's inventory of a book from 15 years ago that kids like instead of editing a new book or discovering a new voice. And of course, you want to earn the money and you want to do good business, but nobody wants to make money because somebody is anti-Semitic.
Right. Yeah.
It's horrible. It's the worst money.
And to stay for a minute with publishing and the kind of follow-on effects of because if we're working with the premise that
are you shitting me?
Banning
they
books,
went after the Scarlet Letter.
Most of the banned books are
doesn't surprise me
from the perspective of written by about people of color, LGBTQ people, vastly, right? Like that's vastly what we're talking about. So understanding that, in commercial publishing, what about getting books green-lighted or greenlit? Because I'm thinking about, you gave a little bit of a brief history of publishing and said that a lot of the decision-making demographics in publishing aren't actually that change. And it would be great if you could just tell us a little bit because you're unusual in your position.
Sure.
So what about, what gets stories out in the world so that they can even become books in the first place?
I used to be on one about publishing on this front. And I used to be like, well, we're not putting money behind these books and we're not marketing these books and da-da-da-da. And I think that I actually feel like there are issues. There are always going to be issues. And it's not just because I'm inside and I've been like, there's no, Stockholm syndrome happening. It just, it doesn't feel like there's actually, what we're dealing with is an absence of book buyers. Right. I know how many Black Americans there are. And I know that, like I published a book, a beautiful book. And, I know how many buyers there were for that. And it's disproportionate with the audience for that book. Right. Plus all the other people who just might like a story written by a Black woman. That's very good. Right. And, greenlighting it wasn't a problem. Getting people to understand that it was something that we wanted to do in this new context wasn't a problem. Making sure that it had the care and support it needed to be made and to set it up from the sort of imprint side, was there. It's like I can't really complain about anyone's behavior here, but I don't know if anyone or if there's ever been any pressure on booksellers to diversify their workforce, on big retail, on critics and book coverage. I don't know that the war has gone there. And so what happens is you've got a sort of updated professional, an updated scenario inside of publishing where we have more editors of color, we have a couple of publishers of color, we have lots of moving pieces that are going on and improving. We're pushing out a lot of content. We're paying because Publishing Paid Me happened, right? So nobody wants to underpay a writer of color or a marginalized writer in any way. I think people are really scared of getting busted for that sort of thing. So it just doesn't happen. Not that I naturally do that. I see the books at a larger scale because that's how I view them, right? I believe in the audience. But if you don't change sales and selling, however that looks, whether it's algorithmically at Amazon or whether it's, sort of a human being with their own bias, which we all have, that stayed in a role for 30 or 40 or 50 years, making those same decisions. What's going to change and how do we, in fact, find those readers? So I do think that there's like a soft, or not even soft, a very large censorship happens all the time. We self-censor by simply not having the people who can widen the audience. For me, I think that it's an interesting timeline to think about what's happening with getting the books done, because they are happening, but they're not selling. You're seeing, even in any mainstream publishing scenario, books are not making it to the bestseller list. You see lots of mysteries, lots of very commercial titles, nowhere near the politics of 2020, where we saw, Jesmyn and Ibram and all these people were on the bestseller list. And we were thinking about, all these new topics, it's like, the readership has shrunk back. And we haven't done the work to sort of engage them. So I think that it is really politically, crucially important for those functions that sit around publishing to really try to match the changes that have been made. Of course, we have got to keep changing, and there's lots of changes left to make. But it doesn't matter if I pay somebody $5 million and everyone's really excited. If I go into a meeting with somebody and they're like, my customers aren't going to buy that, my order is no books.
I just want to jump in here. One of the biggest purchasers of books in this country is libraries, right? Like libraries buy a ton of books. And I have to say that question of who is the person connecting you to the book is a live question in our field that we talk a lot about and work on a lot, that you absolutely have to have library staff who reflect the community, because we are the people that connect books to readers, and making sure that everyone in our libraries has because it's not as if there aren't people of color working in libraries. It's just they are often in staff positions that aren't at the front line connecting a person to a book. And so
the bookstore too.
That Emily, because I was actually thinking about this connection too. One of the things that is happening with book bans, I want to just kind of keep making this point. It is not happening in a vacuum. It is part of a political and an economic reclamation. This is just the cultural piece. So like when Lisa's talking about like the audience and like that clawing back of what happened in 2020 and seeing the shrinking of the audience and like people's, fatigue with race books and talking about like, this is part, and like going after libraries is, yes, trying to control like the sort of like cultural discourse and who gets to own what will be the legitimate master narrative.
Then why is Moms for Liberty trying to ban books about little black girls and gay penguins that have no sex in them?
Get to control a really
Conservatives
major
know
piece
their
of the
talking points.
economic
They don't
puzzle
think outside of them.
Who buys books? Who is the economic actor of who gets books into schools? Another massive customer for books, for curriculum, for textbooks. You talk about, we publish a story every other year that our textbook market is almost completely driven by one state, Texas, because it's big. And that is the reason why they have an outsized influence over the cultural narrative of our story. So there's like the political piece, the cultural and the economic piece, and all of those are working in tandem. And in part, the reactionary response to trying to own book bans, own the cultural piece of the reclamation through book bans, is just trying to keep pace with what's happening politically and economically. It's just doing its part, keeping it going. So while it may seem like a small story, like who would bother with trying to ban 30 books in a small school district, it's just doing its part to be part of this overarching political and economic reclamation that's happening. And that's why it would matter. Libraries buy books, schools set the tone for who will buy the textbooks and who will own the narrative, which then in turn determines who will be the book buyer, which then sets the tone. Well, who will then work in publishing and marketing? Who will then be the critics? Who will then in turn determine who will decide that, oh yeah, I don't mind being a teacher. I don't mind working in publishing. All of that, I think, works in tandem. And so really all are having a conversation. And that is why I think we're in this moment.
Absolutely.
And I'm so glad
the library
mentioned, go ahead.
The library is a physical place you can go to have your protests, and the book is an object, it's a representation of all these anxieties and these whatever. They're like that. You can exercise real material power in a library, right? Which is why I think we've become a target in that way.
Mm-hmm. And I'm so glad, Tracy, that you mentioned here textbooks, which are, I'm sorry, what'd you say, Emily? The last thing you just said?
Nothing, go ahead.
I wanted to hear it. That you mentioned textbooks, because that's a whole another piece of this. And, Rosa Parks sat down because she was tired. A woman of no particular race at no particular time or place in history right? I mean, so it goes.
Just decided to sit down.
Just decided to sit down. Right. Exactly. Exactly. Before we move to the many beautiful questions that are circulating, I'd love just a short anecdote from each of you of who you were as a young reader.
All right.
Oh God.
So guys, I think I'm going to cut this spy stream short. It's pretty clear to me that so they're live streaming this on Twitter, which I didn't know they were going to do when they started this. To be honest, all of them are on their very best behavior. There's nothing controversial that's really being said, and I don't think we're going to get anything controversial. Simply, I mean, they're broadcasting it on their Twitter. They all know this. They all know they're for public consumption right now. And so I don't think we're going to get really anything out of this. The big takeaway for me, and this is not going to make conservatives happy, but must be a day that ends in Y. The big takeaway for me is these people have their talking points down. They're going to win on book bans. I really and truly hope that all conservatives listening to me understand this. You are handing the left a golden victory on your book bans. So I hope you enjoyed trying to get Ruby Bridges out of school and the book about the gay penguins that has no sex in it out of school and all of the other books that you don't like out of school. And oh, by the way, can we just get our Bible on the bookshelf at the same time? Because, you know, we're here anyway, so why don't we just get our Bible too? Yeah, conservatives have really done that. I hope it was worth it. Because every single talking point that you heard up until this point in this stream was an absolute master class in how to get independent voters who don't like censorship. It was a master class. I have explained this a million times to my audience, but just in case there's anyone new here, the woke left is not afraid of you guys banning books. Because socialist book publishers and dozens of those exist, are producing more books than you can even wrap your heads around. Every single time you get a book that you don't like out of that library and you high five and you think you're all done and you're going home and there's nothing else to do, that book is going to be replaced with 5 more books. And those are books that you don't know about, you don't know the titles of. And if you get those 5 books out of the library, each of those is going to be replaced with 5 more books because that's how quickly they're churning out books and content that you are not going to be able to keep up with. The woke left is not afraid at all of your book bans. They already know they have them beat. It's not even close. What they're doing with the book bans, though, is they are taking your strategy, your expert strategy of being reactionary again, without thinking about the consequences of what you're doing again. They are taking your reactionary strategy that you have not properly thought through, and they are using it to gain more and more power, gain more and more voters, and to use every single talking point that they used, or that one lady used, like that college professor, that was a talking point that was used against the left in 2020. I hope people realize this. The same talking points that college professor is now using against the right, and by the way, she's correct in every single thing that she's saying, those were talking points that were used against the left to get disaffected lefties like me to leave the Democratic Party in 2020 to vote for Donald Trump. Now, the left has wised up to your plans. Conservatives have jumped off the censorship fucking deep end, and now the left correctly is saying you are illiberal conservatives. This is not liberalism. This is not classical liberalism. You are censoring. You are banning books that have nothing to do with sex. You're banning books you haven't even read. And conservatives, and I know this is true, conservatives are in fact trying to get books that they haven't even read and have no context of banned from the library. And then they go to the library and they brag about the fact that they haven't read the damn book, which of course makes the librarian turn their head off to you for all time after that because you haven't even bothered to do the most basic level of due diligence. And it is illiberal. And these are book bans. And they are going to use it against you all the way up to 2024. Moms for Liberty has done more damage to the anti-woke movement than any organization on the left. I promise you. Moms for Liberty is controlled opposition at absolute best. They put everyone on this road. A few people like me raised our hands when all this started over a year ago, and you can find videos on my channel over a year old saying, cut it with the book banning bullshit. But Moms for Liberty, no. They don't want to listen to anyone else. They just go down their moral panic, satanic panic bandwagon and try to ban everything they don't like. And then, oh, wow, all of a sudden, the left is taking your strategy and using it against you, and they're going to use it against you to win elections. You are going to lose if you do not drop the book banning bullshit, and I mean fucking immediately. Of course you won't, because you aren't going to listen to me, and there's going to be someone reading on Twitter, oh, she's just a leftist, she was always a leftist, she's not speaking our talking point, she was always a leftist, me. This is the biggest gift that you guys have given the left since you since you successfully repealed Roe v. Wade, which was the biggest fundraising boom for them in a generation. They registered more young voters off of Roe v. Wade than you can ever possibly overcome with one Scott Presler, who is the only person that's actually working for conservatives. And now they're going to do exactly the same thing with book bans, and they're going to win if you don't cut the bullshit. You've lost this battle, conservatives. You've lost it. You just don't understand that you've lost it yet because no one in the conservative influencer circuit is being honest with you to tell you how badly you have effed this up unnecessarily. Unnecessarily. Another unforced error. Someone asked me in the chat earlier today, Carlin, is the United States going to become a socialist state, or is there still room to save it? And my instant answer to him is, oh yeah, we're becoming a socialist state. Oh, 100%. There is no doubt in my mind. There is no doubt in my mind at all that the United States is going to become a socialist state. And by the way, they're using your book bans against you too to turn your kids into activists. I know this because I have Emily talking about it from that librarians conference. I just haven't released the clip yet. It will be going up on my Substack. They are openly weaponizing the book banning bullshit against you to go to your children to say, aren't your parents being unreasonable? Isn't it awful that they're banning books? Maybe you should become an activist so that you can fight back against it. They're using it to turn your children into activists. And that was always going to happen. I told you this from the very beginning. It was always going to be used against you in every possible way. The United States is going to become a socialist state because there is no opposition to it. There is no real opposition to it. And conservatives don't listen and they don't think and they invest tens, hundreds of millions of dollars in organizations like Moms for Liberty who use it to hand the left win after win after win after win after win on a silver fucking platter. That's why we're going to become a socialist state. Not because the left is oh so competent, because they're not, but because they, by comparison, the left are goddamn geniuses to what the right puts out there, to everything that the right does, because every single strategy the right chooses, every single strategy your influencers put on you is turned around and used against you. And then your influencers lie to you and say, we're winning, we're winning, we're winning. Don't you see the tide turning? We're winning. No, you're not winning. You're not winning anything. The left is kicking your ass up and down the playing field, and you guys are so dumb that you don't even goddamn see it because you refuse to listen. You refuse to listen to what they're saying. You refuse to listen to what they're talking about. You refuse to look at their policies. You refuse to look at every single thing that they're doing. We are going to become a socialist state because of how goddamn incompetent and feckless the conservative right is. Ain't nothing we can do to stop it. I really don't think. If smarter people had bigger platforms, maybe. I don't know. But I can teach 100 people to speak socialist, and that ain't going to make a dent in what's going on, because conservatives do not fucking listen, and they do not think before they do things. The left is owning you in every way that they can possibly own you. Oh, no, this ain't going to do shit. Sorry, too late. You guys want to know when it's going to get really bad? It's going to get really bad in about 10 years. When all of the kids that are in school today have graduated and are in the real world, that's when it's going to start getting really bad, because every single child in school today is being trained to be an activist. Every single one. And they are being trained to be activists from the time they are kindergarteners. You think it's bad now? You've done nothing to fix the schools. You've read about things that don't matter. You have sent independent voters and disaffected lefties into the loving open arms of the Democratic Party because you're so awful that you can't focus on creating a vision for the country that is more proactive than "we're not the left, vote for us." While the left is over there going, they're taking away taking away to the right to choose. They're banning books. They're doing every bad thing that we always told you they would do. Look at these racist people that are doing every bad thing that we always told you that they were going to do. And their argument's more compelling than yours, and their vision is more compelling than yours. And they're going to win. Because you're doing nothing to fight back in the schools. You're doing nothing to change what's going on. Your strategies are completely ineffectual. They have captured the entire Generation Z in the schools. All of them. You wait till they graduate. 5, 10 years from now, that's when the real pain really begins. We haven't even begun to feel it yet. You think it's bad now? You just wait. You just wait. You're going to feel the result of your fecklessness in 5 to 10 years. Anyway, I need to stop this stream because we have another stream that's getting started in about 10 minutes, less than 10 minutes now. So if you guys want to stick around on the channel, we are going to be watching this gender studies thing that came out of New College. I will explain more about that in a couple minutes, but it is not the same stream that we're watching now. It's going to be on a different stream. I just have to get it all set up. I will be going live around 5:15 or so. Go take a break, go take a bathroom break, and I will see you guys real soon. Thank you. Bye.